know when God is going to show mercy, but the child died. And then it said he went in and he comforted Bathsheba, his wife, and Solomon was conceived, the great king of Israel who would come. But Bathsheba also lost a child, not just David. Their first child, her first child to ever be born, she lost a child. And not only did she lose a child, but she lost a future king of Israel. Well, I know that I've known a lot of musicians. Musicians in church, my first experience with musicians was really at Howard Payne. Was really when I went to a Bible college for my first year, and there were a lot of musicians. It's still a big music school, fine music school, and a lot of these young men were going to music ministry. So they had gotten licensed to the ministry. But their focus was on music, not ministry. That's a heck of a deal. They got licensed because that's what you have to do back then to go be a music minister in a church. That was the plan. So their focus was always on music, not ministry. David wrote a lot of songs. He was a songwriter. And as a songwriter, he didn't write them for you. He didn't write them for me. He didn't write them for Saul. He exclusively wrote these psalms to worship God. That was his whole intent in writing songs. He didn't write this down for us to read them. That was not the purpose. Well, in knowing lots of songwriters, I don't know if you've ever seen taken a look at David or Brian's sheets up here or any musician's sheets. What they write down on their music scribble is not something that you can follow and sing. Okay, it is not written for your use, it's written for their use. They translate things and stuff. And so everything David had ever written was not for public use. It was for his use. It was for his purpose in writing to God, to sing to God, to worship God. That's one of the reasons the Psalms are so wonderful, because they had absolutely nothing to do with trying to make the top 40 or sell 1 million records. It wasn't about that. It wasn't even about his performance. I have no idea, as David aged, if his voice held up. But what I do know is that David continued to sing to God, because upon his discovery by the prophet's confrontation, David wrote the 51st Psalm, which in my estimation is his finest psalm, because he comes and he bears his soul before God, and he lays before God, and he worships God, and he says, against you and you only, Lord, have I sinned and done this evil in thy sight. You are justified when you judge me, and the bones you have crushed, you are just in doing. Restore me, restore my soul. And he continues, wash me and I shall be whiter than snow. Hear me and I shall be heard. Know me and I shall be known. Take not your Holy Spirit from me, but restore to me. Restore to me. So David began to worship God. That was his plan. Because, see, David's plan in battle was to worship God. When David got in trouble, when his whole camp was captured and all of his men wanted to stone him, he went and worshiped God. That was his plan. When he sinned with Bathsheba and he lost his way and he was confronted, he fell before God and he worshiped God. When that baby was dying, he got on his face and he worshiped God, because that's what he believed. He didn't cuss, he didn't blame anybody, he didn't make excuses. But out of his mouth came worship and praise, because that's where his heart was, and that's why David was a man after God's own heart, because his belief system, who he was walking with God. Well, so David had collected all these songs, all these wonderful, wonderful songs in his lifetime, and I don't know that he'd even written all of them down. Okay, most songwriters write stuff that nobody ever knows about. They sit around and, the Beatles probably have 15,000 more songs that they would just sit around, I mean, one afternoon they were going, hey, why don't we sing about Yellow Submarine, Yellow Submarine? And they go, well, why don't we do that? Sold another 1,000,000 records, I mean, they wrote more hit songs just playing around in the studio than most people can by trying. Because it's just what they did. And so David was the same way. He had the Holy Spirit with him. He was powerful as a writer. But it was after this Psalm 51, it was after this encounter with the prophet, it was after he had fallen on his face, that most rabbis agree, most scholars agree, it was at that moment in time that David ordered the Psalms to be recorded in a book. And every musician will tell you, it's one thing for me to have a piece of paper that I sing off of, it's another thing to write it down for other people to be able to read and sing. So I don't know how long it took David to do this. I don't know how long it took him to do it. I want to read this again to you. Now in the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab, and he sent it by the hand of Uriah. He had written a letter saying, place Uriah at the front fort of the battle so that he would be killed, and withdraw from him so he'll be struck down and die. I wonder if the pen David wrote all those psalms with was the same pen that he wrote the letter having Uriah murdered. I wonder. And I wonder if every time as he began to record these psalms and he looked at that pen, he would see Uriah's face. Every time he looked at Solomon, every time he held Bathsheba's hand. David was a great man of God. But one of the encouraging things about David's encounter in this, one of the encouraging things, is that he sinned a great sin, and he paid a great price. He reaped what he sowed. But God blessed him. And from that relationship, Solomon came. And from Solomon, in the genealogy, Jesus Christ would be born from David's throne. God is far more gracious than you and I. God is far more merciful than you and I. God is far, far more merciful than we will ever be. We judge people, we judge their actions, we judge their deeds, and we shake our heads and we cluck our tongues and we go, Be so thankful that God's mercy isn't controlled by a church or a set of rules or a set of man's laws, that His grace isn't contained within my thoughts or your thoughts or our theology, but it is from God's belief system. And God believed so much in you, so much in who you are, that while they were murdering Him on the cross, He said, Father, forgive them. Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they're doing. That thief on the cross next to Him, He said, you'll be in paradise with me. You'll be in heaven with me. And all the guy said was, quit picking on Him. Quit picking on Jesus. God is so much more merciful than us. God believes that you are worth sending His Son. He believes that you are worth saving. And He believes that you are worth having the Holy Spirit live in you. That's what God believes. Let's go to the Lord in prayer.